Hey guys, Prof Sales coming at you with a video, and today's video is another episode of Fact or Fiction. As you know, this is a series where I tackle the misconceptions, myths, truisms, facts that are out there in the reselling community and give you my take on whether or not they are indeed fact or indeed fiction. So today's topic is about scammers, specifically scammers on eBay. So let me define what I mean here. There's this idea that we should fight against all the scammers on eBay. So what's a scammer, you might say? Well, a scammer usually involves some sort of refund or return that someone's asking to do that seems maybe fishy, fraudulent, just that they're flat out lying and they want their money back. They want to keep the item, they want a discount. Basically, they're trying to get the item for cheaper or free, if possible, when in reality there's nothing wrong with the item and you as the seller did nothing wrong. So there's a concept in the reseller community that when these people do these sorts of things that you must fight, or else you will encourage more of these people or keep encouraging this person, and you'll hurt the community as a whole, and of course you'll hurt your own sales and so on. So I want to examine that. I think probably the best way to look at this is to maybe take a hypothetical situation. Let's assume that you sell a $50 item, electronic item on eBay. Doesn't matter what it is. It really doesn't matter. Although that could make some difference in certain situations, but for the sake of argument, we'll just say it's a generic $50 electronic item. You ship it, everything goes okay, and a few days later, after the buyers receive it, you receive a message saying that the item is broken, defective, not what the description said, something that you know is probably not true. Now, you have to remember, when a buyer says something is broken, you really don't know if it's true or not, because you didn't receive the item on the other end. Things do get broken in shipping sometimes, legitimately. But let's assume for the moment that the buyer is completely lying to you, and in reality, nothing is wrong with this item. And you have a strong suspicion that nothing is wrong with this item based on the communications you've had with the buyer. Maybe the person didn't have the best feedback, maybe they've done similar things, who knows? So they sent you this communication and you've sold them this $50 item, and we'll say there's different scenarios here, but let's say they want a full refund. Now, you've got a few options here. Depending on what your return policy is, you could send the item back or have them send the item back to you. But let's examine that. Let's say they do send the item back and it is in fact broken. Well, what do you have now? You have a broken item, a buyer who had to go through the trouble to send the item back to you, who may or may not have been lying, and you're still going to have to refund them the money. eBay is going to force you to do it, and if eBay doesn't force you to do it, most times PayPal is going to force you to do it. But it really doesn't matter about force, because there's a bigger issue at work here. Let's assume that you sold this item to the buyer and they send you an email back and you read the email. 2 minutes. Let's assume you send them a reply back. Another 2 minutes. They send you another reply. 2 minutes. They send you another reply. 2 minutes. Let's say now they give the item, or they send the item back to you, and you get it back and you realize it's broken. Well, now you may have additional communication with the buyer. You may have you may spend time looking up this buyer in various online databases to see if this is someone who scams people. You may send off a sharply worded response. You may talk to eBay about your options about, hey, this buyer is lying. In all told, you're spending more and more time with this buyer, and you're not getting any more money out of it. So let's think about what they call in economics opportunity cost. When you're doing something over here to promote your economic interest, you can't be doing other things because you have the finite resource of time. So if you spend 30 minutes doing something, you can't spend 30 minutes doing other things. You spend it on those things, whatever that thing is. So it's hard to say how much time you will spend on a return, but let's just we can probably safely say it's going to be anywhere from 30 minutes to maybe as long as an hour. And let's go back to our average hourly rate. If your average hourly rate that you make on your items is $10, then you could spend, you know, up to a half an hour is going to cost you $5 basically of your time. If you spend a whole hour, it's going to cost you $10, but you're out 50. But let's think about this for a moment. 9 times out of 10, you're going to refund this person anyway. So they're going to get all their money back, right? They can escalate, especially if they know how to play the game. So they're going to get the $50 back. So now it becomes an issue of, do you want to put more and more time into this issue with the hope that you will be able to hang on to some of the money from the sale, if not all the money? So 90% of the time, you're going to end up paying $50 back to this person. The other 10% of the time, you might be able to keep some percentage of that money, maybe even all of it. But when you do the math on that, you realize that in the long run, you lose somewhere around $40 by fighting this quote-unquote return, or just the return in general. It doesn't even matter if you fight it. So now you have to decide, do I want to lose $40 in the long run? And I'm not going to bore you with the math, but I don't want to lose $40 in the long run. Or do I want to make more money with that time in my other parts of my business and just move on? For me, unless it's a hugely expensive item, I'm going to want to move on to the next item, to the next task in my business. And I think you should too. Because even if this person is scamming you, you're going to lose so often, you're going to be out the money anyway. And even when the times you win, you're going to spend time doing it, so you're not going to get the full value that you sold this item for back. You're going to only be able to keep some of it because you've spent time on it that you could have been doing something else with. Rarely would it be the item be so expensive that you would need to spend that it would make sense mathematically to spend the time to fight it, because you're just not going to win very often. You're gonna lose the entire selling price of the item so many times that that you can't make up for that the times when you do win. So that's one reason I would say don't fight the scammers, return and move on. The second reason is this, and this is the faulty logic I hear from lots of eBay sellers, especially in Facebook groups and so on. This argument that, well, if you don't fight these people, you're encouraging these people this kind of behavior, and we're never going to stop these people if we don't stand up to them. All right. Why do people commit crimes, go to prison, then come back out of prison and commit more crimes? Shouldn't they have learned their lesson? The reality is there's something called a recidivism rate, which means how often people return to jail after committing a crime. And that recidivism rate is very high in this country. Lots of people go to jail, and it's because they're back in the same situations they were in, but more importantly, they have the same mindset. Nothing changed while they were in prison. They didn't learn their lessons, so to speak, for the most of them. How does this apply to the eBay situation? If someone is a scammer and is trying to pull the wool over your eyes and pull the wool over the eyes of other people on eBay, do you really think you standing up to them is going to stop that behavior? That they're suddenly going to say, oh, I see the error of my ways. This person, seller so-and-so, is not going to give me a refund, so I'm going to stop trying to scam people. That's just ridiculous. You're trying to change human behavior and the mindsets of people by you standing up to them. That's just not how we change. It takes things much bigger than that. It takes things that are really, quite frankly, out of your control as a reseller. Whether you give the person a refund or whether you fight tooth and nail to prevent the refund, you're not going to keep that person from doing it to somebody else. Now, some of you might be saying, well, they're just opportunists. They're not opportunists. If someone's honest, they're going to be honest, whether there's a law or a rule in place anyway. You don't suddenly get morality and ethics because some eBay seller stands up to you about refunding an item to you. That is just ridiculous. I don't get that argument at all. I don't think the people making that argument have really thought it through. You're not going to turn a dishonest person into an honest one because of your standing up to them. And you're not going to turn an honest person into a dishonest one either. That's just not the way we're wired. It takes things much greater than that. We learn our values and ethics and morals at a much earlier age, and then they get shaped as we go through life. But it's not going to change because of the way somebody is acting. And if you think, well, if I stand up to them, then they're not going to do this particular type of refund fraud or scam again. Even if that were true, you don't think they can come up with other ones? You don't think they can figure out a different way to do it and get around the rules? If somebody wants to cheat the system and lie and get money back for an item that's perfectly good and there's nothing wrong with it, you're not going to stop them. You're not. That's just not the way people think, and it's just not the way the world works. So when I hear that argument, I just think to myself, it's just not valid. And it's just not going to happen that way. So don't think you're going to go out there and change the world by being the eBay morality police. You're not. So it comes down to this. You're not going to change people's behavior. You've got to decide what your time is worth, and if the item that is in question is worth the fight. And you've also got to decide if there's such a great reasonable chance you succeed and you're going to get your money back or item anyway. The answer to most of those questions is you're not. Usually you're not going to get the item back, and if you do, it's damaged or broken, and what can you do about it? Then you can't sell it, and you've still spent the time and got nothing to show for it, and you're going to have to give them a refund. Or you can do what I do 99.9% of the time, is just refund them and move on. I'm not saying you won't ever win a situation on eBay. I'm not suggesting you won't ever come out to the good. But what do you really win there anyway? You've still spent time. If you initially put an hour into that item and made $20 on it, and now you spend another hour fighting it, you just cut your profit in half per hour. Now you're down to only making $10 on it, even if you get your 20 bucks back, or you get the item back. Doesn't matter. So why take all that time and energy to fight all these scammers? And on a side note, some of the people who are returning items and are asking for refunds are not scamming you. Even if it seems like they are, there are legitimate things happen. If you don't think that's true, become a buyer online. Become an eBay buyer, become an Amazon buyer. You're going to see that things happen out of your control. Sellers make mistakes. The post office, UPS, whomever damages items, or items are not as they were described. It happens. So, and believe it or not, you can make those mistakes too. They can happen to you, even no matter how careful you are. Because if you're doing any kind of volume on eBay, you are not going to remember the particulars of every single item that you send out that door. If you're doing any kind of volume at all, you're just not. It's just not going to happen, even if you took the best pictures in the world. So put away the pictures, put away the big long emails, put away the 12-paragraph return policies on your eBay listings, and put away all these preconceived notions that you're going to change dishonest people into honest ones. You're not. You've got to do what's right for your business. You got to do what's best for your business. You got to do what's most profitable for your business and what's the best utilization of your time. Time, remember, that's the one we can't get any more of, is time. You can never recover the time you're going to spend on all these scammers and all these refunds. So no matter what, that clock is ticking. The more time you spend on it, the less you're going to make, no matter what happens. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video, everyone. I hope that you got something out of it. If you liked it, hit the like button down below and leave me a comment. I'd like to hear from you and try to answer every single one of them. Also, consider subscribing to Prof Sales. There's a link here in the video, and you can get the next video and videos in your email inbox. So you don't have to go searching for them. And I hope to hear from you guys soon. So as always, this is Prof Sales saying good sales to you.